Why do all the best shows get cancelled? I have seen tons of Spider-Man incarnations. As a fan, I've seen many of his popular stories done over and over again in many different ways. Some shows have worked and some have not. The 90s animated show, while the stories weren't very complex and the dialogue, and this is just my opinion, was nauseating, it was still always fun to watch on Saturday mornings, and it has that nostalgic factor that wins me over every time I happen to run into it on TV. That is possibly the most popular animated Spider-Man show, which makes me ask, why the hell had I never heard of The Spectacular Spider-Man until I ran into it on YouTube a few months ago? The Spectacular Spider-Man is possibly the best series to really capture almost everything about Spider-Man that us fans love. The characters, the relationships, the stories and the villains all feel like they've been directly pulled out of the comic books. Now of course Spectacular Spider-Man isn't a perfect series, it has its few flaws, but as far as I can tell, it's probably the series to get the most things right. And I'm sorry to all the 90s kids, but I genuinely think that it's better than the 90s animated show. When I first saw the animation for Spectacular Spider-Man, I instantly thought that the series looked rather cheap. The animation style was edgy and I just had to get used to it. Now it no longer bothers me. The only time I think it weighs the series down is Spidey's web-slinging scenes, because it's animated in a way that no one could ever swing like that, and it gets to the point when it actually looks like he's defying the laws of gravity. The first thing I caught on to and liked was the fact that Peter Parker and Spider-Man looked like teenagers. I was incredibly happy about this. Spider-Man is always said to be about 15 or 16 years old, and on few occasions has the character actually looked it. Television and film has this weird expectations that characters should always look a lot older than they would appear in real life. Tobey Maguire was clearly a young adult in the Raimi films, and clearly so is Garfield in Amazing Spider-Man. Now I have no problems with appearances most of the time. If the actor can make me believe the age that their character is meant to be, then that's fine. But there's a point where it's equivalent to an audience being made to believe that the smallest person in the group is actually the tallest, just because everyone in the group says he's the tallest, when clearly he isn't. Animation has had this problem as well. The 90s Peter Parker looked like a not-so-subtle adult bodybuilder in his late 20s, and the Ultimate Spider-Man Peter Parker looks like a 19-year-old. Usually it doesn't matter, like I said, it usually depends on the actor, but one of the best things about Spider-Man is that he's a teenager. He's 16, and 16-year-old boys in real life don't look like adults. So the fact that Peter Parker and even Spider-Man, yes, he even looks like a teenager in the suit, looks the age that he's supposed to be, that instantly made me happy. I mean, who's going to relate to Peter Parker when he looks like an adult model? And then we're just supposed to buy that he's one of the biggest losers in the school just because everyone says he is. Even though in real life, someone who looked like that in high school would most likely be respected by a lot of people. Now I know I sound harsh, like I'm saying everyone in school is shallow, but majority of the time that's genuinely how high school social life works until everyone grows up properly. And the Spectacular Spider-Man even addresses the high school social life, with the ongoing relationships between Peter and his friends, which include the popular group, as well as the ones we all know and love, like Gwen, Harry and MJ. Now even though I'm not 16 anymore, I can still relate to this character, and I'm sure many other people do too. He's made even more relatable because he looks, sounds and acts like a teenage boy, something that Spider-Man on TV and film seems to get wrong a lot. And all of this is awesome because the social implications are all there, they feel real, and these characters act like real people, in a world of superheroes, and it's made a bit more awesome because it's not even in live action. This is an animated series, which means it's an actual series and it isn't just random episode that doesn't go anywhere after random episode that doesn't go anywhere. There's a lot of minor stories to follow, and they all pretty much get resolved or addressed before the season is out. To open up minor stories and not resolve them till later seasons would probably have been too much. So each season feels necessary, instead of there just being so many episodes that the show just decides to break them up into sets and call them seasons. Then of course there's the overall big story that we follow, usually about a threat or a big relationship that gets resolved after an arc that happens gradually throughout that particular season. Despite this being an animated series, it's clearly a show for Spidey fans as well as kids. In fact, it's accessible to all ages. Many people would see that this is animated and turn the other cheek just because it's animated and they instantly think that it's for kids. Now there's nothing I can do about that. That's how a majority of the world views animated shows these days. But it's animated shows like Spectacular Spider-Man that's an example of animated shows to this day being capable of so much more. I feel obligated to mention that this has been replaced with a dumbed down, more child-friendly show that just proves that majority of the world right. I'm talking of course about Ultimate Spider-Man. See my next video for more on that. So we've got a lot of good things going on in this series. We have first and foremost a great theme. A TV series theme doesn't always need to be good, but if you want to engage your audience and get them pumped to get sucked into the universe, you need a good hook. The theme for Spectacular Spider-Man is great. It's upbeat, it's got something about it that feels like a 60s vibe, but also very catchy and enjoyable. I don't think I've ever seen a show with so much respect for the source material. Even certain stories are directly taken from the comic books. It's a good wink to the fans, and it's just also great to see these classic stories come to life via animation. Of course, to any non-religious fan or the kids watching, this would be a new story to them, and I don't mind because it's always handled really well and it doesn't feel like it's just stealing stories to slap onto new episodes. They play an important role in the overall series. Then you have certain things that only the fans will notice, such as particular shots animated in a way that looks identical to those in the films. There was one particular opening scene with Spidey web-slinging throughout New York City on an average day, and I couldn't help but smile throughout. Many shots and moves from Spidey looked exactly like they did in Spider-Man 2. And then in a flashback to the origin in a later episode, many shots look identical to the shots used in the origin scene in the 2002 Spider-Man film. And in another episode, when Spidey has to stop a truck, he uses the same method as he used in Spider-Man 2 with the train. So cool. This was great. It showed just how aware the series was of previous Spider-Man incarnations. It was being respectful of them, and in a sense, embracing them. After all, it only takes so many different incarnations of Spider-Man to be done to finally reach one that is almost right on the mark. It's clear that the makers of the show did their homework, and it's being made by people who really know and understand Spider-Man. It feels like a show made by fans, for the fans. I think the handling of the female characters is right on the mark as well. Gwen Stacy isn't a knockout and I like it. She's cute, sure, but she isn't a blonde goddess like she was in the comics or the Amazing Spider-Man movie. I like that she has glasses on 24/7 and looks rather brainy, as she is a very smart character. She and Peter have a romantic relationship that gets built throughout the series, and I get why they're attracted to each other. It's amazing how two animated characters can make me buy their attraction to one another more than Peter Parker and Mary Jane did in the first Spider-Man movie. Of course, Spider-Man has always had drama elements in it, and so sometimes there will be not so subtle hints at these two being attracted to one another, but it's cute, which makes it forgivable. These are two teenagers who don't have much experience in the relationship area. It's nice to see them grow as characters and become much more forward with each other as the series goes on. Finally, Mary Jane is Mary Jane. Where the hell has she been all this time? I'm amazed it's taken this long to get her right. She's a confident girl who flirts all the time and is quite the teaser. She always puts on a smile and genuinely brightens up people's day. This is all hiding behind her depressive home life with her abusive dad. Now I can't remember if that home life was ever referenced to in the series, but judging by the handling of her character before the show got cancelled, I can't say I'd be surprised if it would have been addressed later on if the series had continued. Mary Jane is the girl next door. She's friends with everyone and it's pretty hard not to like her. I can see why Peter would fall for this girl, and he never gets together with her in the series, which I like. Their relationship really grows out of Gwen's death in the comics, but we're way ahead of that right now. So Peter and Gwen are the two that we want to see get together at the moment. I'm sure if the show had continued, then their relationship would also have come together. And even though that's the case, I still love watching MJ in this. I also love the way she was introduced in the series. It was exactly the way it was done in the comics. She's such an interesting character, and I fail to see why it's taken this long for someone to write her well. Over the past couple of decades, MJ has been portrayed as the typical damsel in distress in Spider-Man media aside from the comics. She's so much more than that, and it's a shame that the one series to get her right was cancelled. Then to make matters worse, in Ultimate Spider-Man, Mary Jane has been reduced to a character who constantly calls Peter, never gets an answer, leaves a voicemail telling him that he's late for class or their date, then hangs up in a mood. Good one, guys. Then we have Liz Allen, who's one of the popular girls, and after she sees a few examples of Peter standing up for himself when she keeps treating him like crap, she starts to like him. It's almost as if no one had ever stood up to her before Peter did. She really likes Peter, but he hardly gives her the time of day, and he doesn't really realise this. This would have been a problem, but near the end of their relationship, it's obvious that he knows he hasn't treated her very well. Again, this connects to the high school social life. Peer pressure from her popular friends caused Liz to be really mean to people, but being with Peter allowed her to be herself. It's obvious that the way her character was heading before the show got cancelled that she would continue to grow as a person. There's also Black Cat, who I love watching. The makers of the show didn't shy away from this. Black Cat and Spider-Man have a romance, and instead of constantly teasing us that there might be something there, like the other shows have done, we actually get to see Black Cat kiss Spider-Man. And their episodes are really great. I also loved where it was going near the end. I won't ruin it, but things get dramatic and it's a great twist. I don't remember if it was a twist from the comics, but if it was, I had no idea, and it was great. Then there's the ongoing Harry and Norman arc, and it's all played out very slowly, and I'm glad it wasn't rushed. This series wasn't holding back on the adult themes, and I'm glad that Harry's drug addiction plays a role in this. Sure, it's more of an experimental formula from Oscorp, but the idea is still the same. The relationship between him and his dad is handled well, and I've said many times it's a shame that we couldn't see it go further after Season 2. While the show was amazing, and I can see that the people who made it were taking everything seriously and weren't having the words, "for kids," on all the walls of the office that they were working in, still, it feels like animated TV shows seem to be thought of as something that can be thrown in the trash by studios whenever they feel like it. I can't tell you how many animated shows have been cancelled so easily these days and replaced with new ones that will likely get cancelled soon as well. Spectacular Spider-Man was a series in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sony and Marvel were behind the show until Disney bought Marvel Studios, and so Spider-Man's TV rights went straight to Disney. Disney could have chosen to continue Spectacular Spider-Man, but they felt that the show was a bit too adult and edgy for their taste, so they discontinued it. Disney wanted a more child-friendly show, so now we have Ultimate Spider-Man. The show's cancellation is depressing, because you ultimately get entangled in a great overall story, and the fact that it cuts that story off at a cliffhanger that will never ever get resolved is incredibly frustrating. These were characters that I liked and wanted to see get a happy ending one day, and now that can never happen. I know I sound depressing, but when good shows get cancelled it can have that effect on a viewer who was invested in what was going on in the story of the series. So take this as a warning. If you watch this series, you should know going in that a lot of doors are left open and that this show won't ever continue. So if you want to invest your time and interest into Spectacular Spider-Man, expect a very anticlimactic final episode. To wrap up, I'm going to say that the Spectacular Spider-Man is the show for Spidey fans. It's a great character study, it brings dated ideas from the comics and brings them into a modern age, yet keeps those ideas feeling new and fresh. The animation gives the series its own style, and the action is always fun to watch. It had Spider-Man's humour, but never went overboard with gags that took me out of the seriousness of his situation. And it was also timed well and never felt awkward like it did in The Amazing Spider-Man for me. The show can be accessible to anyone. Sure, there are a few adult themes, but they're always executed well, and there's nothing in this series that would make me hesitate at letting kids watch it. Some villains are throwaway or two-dimensional, but I'll cut it some slack by saying that Spider-Man's villains were never famous for depth. But then you have some great villains that are played out and written really well, such as Green Goblin and Venom. The character relationships were all perfectly done, and I can only say so many times how much of a shame it is that we never got to see where it was all going. I'm fairly sure that all episodes are on YouTube, so they're pretty easy to find. Join me next time for a review of the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show. Cheers for watching guys, and as always, if you like this video you can subscribe to my channel.